Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Erik and Derek with Tiger Football Talk. I'm joined with the co-host here, Erik, Christina. Erik, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man.
Fantastic. I'm glad to hear it. I'm doing great too. Thank you so much for asking. I know that's always top of your mind. How's Derek doing? I'm doing great. Thank you. We're here to talk today about Syracuse and Clemson. And, unlike last week, all we had to do last week is heap praise on this fantastic team. Maybe that explained the performance we got, this weekend against Syracuse. But I'll throw it over to you. What are some of your initial thoughts and reactions to that game?
Yeah, I mean, look, any Clemson fan or any college football fan for that matter watching the game this weekend, not happy with the way Clemson performed. Trevor struggled. Our run game struggled with ETN getting hurt and missing part of that game. But at the same time, I feel like we struggled to Clemson levels, right? We struggled to our standard. And I also want to point out that Syracuse, their record doesn't really depict how good of a football team that they really kind of are. I mean, they took UNC 10-6 into the fourth quarter. They played a tight game against Pitt, and they beat Georgia Tech by 3 touchdowns. They had a bad week last week against Liberty, maybe looking ahead to our game. And for whatever reason, they're kind of always our Achilles heel in the past few years. They play us tight. When we struggled, that we kept them in the game. A lot of mistakes, but also a lot of injuries on both sides of the ball.
It's true. I mean, it's a credit to Syracuse. I think Dino Babers is just the coach at Syracuse. I think is top notch. He's a lot of programs. I think he'd be winning a lot more games, and he's had struggles trying to get the quarterback position figured out. But I think he's just an exceptional coach. So credit to him. I think he's dialed into a game plan against Clemson because even last year we won big, but 2 years in a row we struggled against them. I think he just calls a good game against us. And then looking at either offense or defense, I don't think anyone's really walking away saying Trevor had a great game or the running backs had a great game or the offensive line had a great game or something that's probably a little bit less talked about, but the wide receivers not really having a great game. So I think as from an offense standpoint, we scored 47 points. Obviously, It's fantastic. It's a lot of teams would love to be in that position in order to score 47 points. But that was about as bad of a 47-point performance as you will probably see. And that's because the defense really did show up to play. They gave up a couple runs here and there, but as a whole, that defense set our offense up, I think, pretty well throughout the game. Yeah,
and like you said, I think it's a 47-point bad game, which I think many teams would love to have a 47-point bad game, a struggle. Notre Dame last week against Louisville, when they had a bad game, they only put up 12. So you can't complain too much, but I think the one good thing is you're going to get a lot of good game film out of this, and I think that's what the coaches kind of are always looking for.
I agree, and I don't want to take the topic off of Clemson, at all, or Clemson and Syracuse. But later on, I want to come back to Louisville because that's, last week they do play Notre Dame tough. This week they beat up on a Florida State team. Louisville kind of struggled at the beginning of the year. And that's what's kind of difficult. Beginning of the year, you don't know what to make of any team. Syracuse loses to Liberty, but then beats Georgia Tech by 3 touchdowns. It's really hard to say what each team is. And at the end of the day, these are young college kids. These are 18, 19, 20-year-olds going out there to play a game, and you can lay an egg against a Division II team one week and then beat an ACC foe by 3 touchdowns the next week. Kind of like what Syracuse did. So a little bit all over the place for sure.
Absolutely, and I think you brought it up earlier, which was Syracuse came in with a good game plan. They ran a 4-3 defense, ran a ton of gut X blitzes right up the middle, and basically planned on stopping the run game and forcing us to pass. Well, we saw last week that Georgia Tech tried to do that, and Trevor lit it up. This week, Trevor struggled. His passes were not on the mark, throwing behind receivers, a little bit too deep on the touch balls, on the deep routes. Tried to correct that a little bit, overcorrected it, and undershot some people. He had a tough game, but I hope that he learns from it and moves forward. I think, like I kind of said before, Clemson likes this kind of film because you can learn a lot from it. I think the players take a lot from it. I also think we kind of touched on injuries, and we'll bring up more in a minute, but we held out some players. Darion Kendrick was held out. Skalski was held out. Are they banged up a little bit? Sure. But did Dabo maybe try to hold those players out to show some of these young guns? that maybe they aren't as good as they think they are, or maybe get some good film of maybe not the perfect play and game plan executing. I don't know.
Yeah, it's always a catch-22 because Dabo will always say, like, oh, the next game is always the most important game of the year. That's the only game on the schedule. We don't know we're playing the following week. But then at the same time, like, they're always talking about putting certain plays on tape. We want to put them on tape. Holding players out there who could probably play, but we're going to hold them out. Why? It's because we all know you got that championship in mind. So, yes, every game is more important than the last because you need to essentially go undefeated in today's world unless you're the SEC, and then you can have 3, 4, 5 losses. You don't need to win your conference, and you'll still make it in because the SEC is basically better than the NFL at this point in time. But that's for another show, I'm sure. But, I mean, that's just the state of college football we live in at this point. And Dabo says one way, every game's important, but we all know this is about championship football, winning a championship at the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a difficult year too. I mean, you got COVID happening, obviously, players dealing with that, coaches dealing with that. You don't really have spring practice, coming to campus late. Not a ton of prep work going into this season, and I think it's shown with a lot of the injuries. Syracuse is missing Tommy DeVito. Taj Harris didn't travel. Andre Cisco, preseason All-American, out for the season for Syracuse. On our side, I already touched on the Tyler Davises, the Darion Kendricks, the Skalskis, all banged up a little bit, and it's something that we're going to deal with moving on forward.
Yeah, I mean, just if you're a Clemson fan, you may not recognize some of those names that Erik just mentioned. But I mean, imagine if we went into this game without Trevor Lawrence, without who's number one wide receiver, Amari Rodgers at this point in time.
Yeah,
and then imagine if we lose Travis Etienne at halftime because they lost their freshman running back in Sean Tucker, and imagine if we lost Darion Kendrick, which we actually did lose, but our number one playmaker on defense. It's arguable as far as who that is, but a lot of their number ones, a lot of their quote unquote dogs were out in this game. But Dino Babers, again, credit to him. He had them ready to play. And, it's something that, from an offensive standpoint from Clemson, Ohio State last year did a lot of inside blitzes and were very physical. Their corners were against our wide receivers, threw off timing, made it difficult to get open. LSU did the same. And I think Virginia tried to do something similar, but basically this idea of jamming our wide receivers, getting very physical with them, it's something in the ACC. I don't think there's going to be a team who's skilled enough in order to really be able to hang that on us. But that's kind of what it seemed like Syracuse was kind of trying to do. Again, inside blitzes, you were mentioning that earlier. And again, being physical on the outside, just because I think, Trevor Lawrence said he had a bad game and everything, but, if you look at the Georgia Tech tape, those wide receivers sometimes didn't have anywhere within 5 yards of them. They were layup passes. So when the pass goes from here to here, you got to hit this. Can Trevor Lawrence do it, and can he do it over the course of a game? And so,
yeah, and I would say, I mean, again, props to Syracuse. Garrett Williams came out to play. He had a pick six in that game for Syracuse, and I think Tony Elliott came in with the right game plan. He knew they were going to stack the box. We started out with a bunch of tunnel screens, a bunch of just getting the ball to our playmakers like Amari. We were getting 10 yards, chunk plays right at the bat, drove right down. I mean, our first 3 drives ended in points.
Yep.
We came out hot, and I think the players might have seen that 17 points and went, we got this in the bag, and let off the gas, and we came very complacent. I mean, blocked punt. I mean, missed assignment, blocking the outside guy instead of the inside guy. I mean, that's not acceptable on a special teams play. Pick 6 to keep them in the game. Busted safety coverage on the huge 50-yard bomb. Clemson let Syracuse stay in this game. We didn't land the knockout punch, and Syracuse grinded, and there was a lot of effort on that side. And I think there's going to be a lot of tape on the Clemson side that shows maybe a lack of effort in some specific play areas.
Yeah, I mean, sloppy game. I mean, so Syracuse comes in number 1 in the country, in turnover margin. So Clemson did a fantastic job of being +3 in the game, forcing 3 interceptions, got the fumble recovery as well that we returned for a touchdown by Andrew Booth. And we also got one more turnover in the sense of, turnover on downs for their part, and then we had a fake punt that we actually converted. So, I think turnovers were a massive factor in this game just because it seemed like it kept on changing field possession so much, on both sides. They have the pick six for a touchdown. We pick up the football on the sack fumble and take it in for a touchdown. So kind of a wild game and how a lot of that came to play, I think.
Yeah, and watching the condensed version on YouTube, 20 minutes long if you want to watch the entire game real quick. It's a great game. It's a really great game, back and forth. Obviously Clemson with the talent pulls away in the fourth. At the end of the day, it was a 4-score win, 47-26. You look at that stat line and you can't be upset with it. But again, the Clemson standards fell short, and hopefully have something to build on. Moving to next week, we take on Boston College, and another kind of Achilles heel that Clemson has had in the past, and they're 4-2 moving into this game after a big win this past weekend.
Achilles heel, I'm putting you on the spot because I don't even know the answer to this. When was the last time Boston College beat Clemson?
I remember they beat us in 2009 when we went up to Boston College. And but maybe not the Achilles heel in terms of them beating us, but the Achilles heel in terms of us being I think we opened up as a 33, 34 point favorite this weekend. And I don't know the last time we covered the spread against Boston College.
Well, when was the last time Boston College had a winning record through 6 games? 4-2 for Boston College team that nobody was talking about. Bringing over a new coach, again, not to get too much on them, but bringing over the new coach. They brought over the defensive coordinator from Ohio State, who drew up a masterful game plan. Very talented guy. Their quarterback is slinging the ball around the field. Boston College is probably not going to get any love from top 25, but they've always played hard. They've always been a very well-disciplined team. They've been similar to like a Virginia as of late, just disciplined, hard-nosed, well-coached football team that, maybe lacks a little bit of talent, but you get a couple people in the right spot. They're going to be great at running back and at linebacker. So if they ever could just figure out their quarterback position, maybe they'd be halfway decent.
Hey, I know who loves them. Kirk Herbstreit and Lee Corso. Game day Superdog picks. I think 3 out of the last 4 weeks they picked Boston College to win. They love them to cover the spread. So I guess we'll see if they cover the spread again next week. But again, kind of getting back to Syracuse. Syracuse came in with a game plan to stop the run. I think we only ran for 150 yards the whole game.
Really, I don't want to say an abysmal performance. It's not on the offensive line. Some of the schemes that they were doing with how they were slanting their defensive linemen and the linebackers coming in on blitzes as well, it makes it difficult from a communication standpoint to blocks. Regardless if it was just one-on-one blocking, that's one thing. But either way, there's just not enough excuses that from a Clemson standpoint that you can create, regardless of what the situation is, where a Syracuse team that's giving up 250 yards a game on the ground and you run for 150 yards, it can't happen. I really don't care if they load the box. Our people should be able to, especially up front, to be able to block, and then if you're a running back one-on-one, to be able to break the tackle, get around to the outside. And consistently throughout the entire game, it didn't happen. They technically, I think they outrushed us. I think we had 147, they had 150 yards, or vice versa. But either way, it's just not a very good showing from a running game statistic.
It's not, and Dabo was asked in the post-game presser about the O-line and their ability to run block, and he's not concerned, but I think the rest of the country is a little bit concerned. We've got the talent to maybe get around that, run some screen plays, run some run pass options. We can run some outside pitches, but it's still a little bit concerning that our O-line is not able to open these holes that we need them to.
Absolutely. Well, so Dabo, trying to answer the offensive line question, let me equate it to you. Is your fiance Amelia a good cook?
She's an amazing cook.
Absolutely, because what's the other answer you could possibly give? You're not gonna blast her.
Hey, she is actually an amazing cook.
But it doesn't matter because she can be terrible or great. You are not gonna say, "Oh yeah, your wife's a terrible cook" in front of everyone. In the same way that Dabo can't do that there. He can't be like, "Oh, the offensive line is terrible." Why? You take away all the confidence that team, that line unit may have, signaling it to everybody else, which everyone's seen the game tape. They can figure it out anyway. There's only one answer for that. You can't be honest in it. So as much as Dabo wants to say it, it's the can your wife cook question. You just can't do it.
It's fair. I guess I go back to just the effort, and I feel like we fell flat in the second and third quarters effort-wise.
Sure.
big. I mean, our defense really stepped up throughout this game. Yeah. I mean, Brisset forcing that fumble, Booth scoop and score, obviously. But I want to talk about Jalen Phillips.
Yes.
Deep bomb. Syracuse completes the pass. He comes from the opposite side of the field, covers something like 40 yards, and makes the tackle on the 10-yard line. And then the next play, picks it off. I mean, that's effort play right there. And I mean, setting the standard really high by the defense. And Amari Rogers, obviously, on the offensive side, was really putting in the effort this weekend to keep the offense going. But some other players out there, I mean, Nagata, I saw that deep shot to him. Sure, Trevor underthrew it, but your quarterback's having a bad day. He's struggling. All the other players need to help pick him up and make some effort plays to help keep the offense rolling.
Agreed. Did you watch the Sunday NFL game last night? It was the
Seahawks versus Cardinals.
Seahawks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Jalen Phillips tracking down that runner reminds me of DK Metcalf, right?
He had 22 and a half miles per hour, fastest clocked in an NFL game. Whew.
Yeah, he's also massive. That dude is insanely huge. If you don't know,
freak of an athlete.
Google his pictures, look at some of his combine tape and stuff. He makes AJ Brown, his fellow colleague from Ole Miss, look like a small man. That AJ Brown is massive.
Hey, you want to talk about a freak of an athlete, though? Isaiah Simmons, our boy from Clemson. Game-winning interception, man. That's Clemson at the next level. Excited to see all those guys in the NFL week in and week out.
Yeah, just happy for that guy. Obviously, it's been a tough year for Isaiah Simmons trying to find a role. And, I think the team drafted him, wasn't really sure where to put him. You have a short offseason. It's like, if you're a linebacker, you need to be trained on how to be a linebacker. It's different at the next level. And he comes in, has a limited role. And for him to be able to get his head around that quickly, I think the majority of other linebackers would not have been able to turn their head back around, sell that they're going to blitz, back off, grab it, and then start turning upfield for a 10-yard gain, which DK Metcalf actually pushed him out of bounds. So Metcalf had at least 2 tackles in that game. So you don't get any fantasy points for that, unfortunately. I don't know who has them in our league. But
I do. Thank you. Thanks for that. Really just throwing that right in my face. You got me a solid 3 points this weekend.
Yeah,
it's great.
Well, we should add a point for every tackle then from now on out.
Please do. What'd you think of the ACC lineup this weekend?
I think the haves and the have-nots of the ACC are beginning to be drawn. That line is kind of there. Clemson and Notre Dame, I'm going to put at the top for the time being. I believe those are the only 2 undefeated teams left in conference play.
That is correct. Ian Book looked great this weekend, so, I mean, a little bit of a comeback for Notre Dame after that disappointing week against Louisville.
Yeah, and they're playing a Pitt team that has certain areas of strength, especially their run defense. And so I think similar to what Georgia Tech did against us, Pitt did to Notre Dame. Hey, you're not going to run the ball on us. I didn't look at the stat line that much, so hopefully they didn't run for 400 yards. I just saw Ian Book slinging it all over the place. So I assumed, hey, we're going to stop the run. Ian Book, can you beat us? And for one game, he did that. So I'm excited for that game to come up. I'm trying to think. So Louisville, Florida State is probably the game I want to talk about the most. Florida State coming in, I think they came in with all the confidence in the world. They're riding high with a new quarterback who throws a beautiful deep pass. They've been, even though their offensive line has sucked, I haven't heard about the offensive line this year. So either the media is just used to it at this point in time, or maybe they've gotten a little bit better, or this quarterback's so athletic he can get away from them. But
he's athletic and scrambling.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't fix that overnight.
No.
But I think looking at that and seeing Louisville beat them by multiple touchdowns and a really disappointing performance by Florida State. I was hoping that they'd be able to take a next step. I don't think Louisville or Florida State are in the haves of the ACC. I think they're in the have-nots. But Louisville has put up back-to-back good, respectable performances. What about you? Did you watch any ACC play?
Yeah, at the ACC, I mean, you had Virginia in a tight game. Wake beat Virginia Tech, which was kind of a surprising upset in my mind. I mean, Wake was good, but I wasn't expecting Virginia Tech to go down like that. I was kind of more impressed by the Ohio State and the Alabama games. I know they weren't playing anybody amazing, and Waddle for Alabama going down for the entire season is really sad and a hard hit for Alabama. Ohio State, I'm obviously first game. Was expecting maybe a little bit more issues, especially seeing all these other early games of these in ACC. SEC starting a little bit earlier. Ohio State came out hot. I would argue that Nebraska played a very, very shallow cover game, soft coverage. Curious to see how Ohio State responds next week. I believe they play Penn State next week.
Penn State, they do. Yep.
So that'll be a good marquee game. I'm curious to see them against a little bit better of a matchup, and especially after Penn State had that shocking upset against Indiana.
Yeah, now you're looking at Penn State. It's like Penn State, you can start the season 0-2 when you were ranked 8th or 5th or something. Yeah. So, top 10 team, you can end up going the season 0-2, and I'm sorry, but there's not going to be a lot of people picking the Penn State upset. It has nothing to do against Penn State. Ohio State looks like one of the best teams in the country. I think heading into this year, everyone thought Ohio State and Clemson. Kudos to Alabama. I think it's impressive when you lose a once-in-a-generation quarterback, but Tua is fantastic. He's one of the most accurate passers in college football history, and for him to move on to the next level and to lose 2 wide receivers in the first round, I don't think they lost a running back, but we'll just say that they had a lot of transformational changes on their team.
Yep.
Defense still not great, but that offense, Mac Jones can throw the ball. I think they look fantastic. Between Clemson, Ohio State, and Alabama, I don't think there's a clear-cut one.
I would agree. I would say that Clemson, with the body of work that we have so far, looks probably more like the most complete team. I think Alabama and Ohio State potentially have better offenses than Clemson at this point. But on any given day, I think Clemson can hang with them. Defensively, you got Georgia up there. They have their quarterback struggles. We'll see how that shakes out in the SEC. But I think the clear-cut top 3 for sure.
I'm going to interrupt you about Georgia. I can't stand listening to Georgia talk. It's like, listen, this is 2020. This isn't 2016 Alabama where you can win a national championship with a quarterback no one's ever heard of. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen.
Hey, it's going to be Georgia's year because every year it's going to be Georgia's year, and they have yet to win a top matchup.
And every year is the year South Carolina changes it and turns it around and rights the ship, right? It's like, y'all had 4 good years, South Carolina. Just admit it and move on with your life. We can call it a day. But no, the SEC, did you see the recruiting stuff that came out, the recruiting violations from LSU? Because they just got dinged. Yeah, so apparently a booster gave $180,000 to, the parent of an offensive lineman. They self-reported some recruiting violations. So it's just, I think the wheels are coming off fast for LSU. Plenty of talent on that team, and a coach that I think we'll save for another video I'm not as high on. I think he's a great defensive mind, but either way, I think they had a great year last year, and they still have some great talent. I watched them play against, albeit a South Carolina team that is pathetic in every way. That's not a biased Clemson fan's opinion. That's anyone who's watched the tape on them. But I think they have plenty of. So LSU went from being this defensive juggernaut to a year or two later being this crazy offensive powerhouse. But LSU is going to have some issues because they're going to have reduced scholarships, reduced recruiting visits, reduced recruiting times. They've got some level 1 violations levied against them, so they got some issues they got to worry about as well. Yeah,
which is hard considering they already have the issues where they graduated a class of NFL caliber talent at every position. We already knew that they were going to have a tough road ahead graduating all those seniors and graduates. So having this on top of that, it's really gonna keep them down in the SEC for a while.
Plus opt-outs. I think Jamar Chase opted out. I want to say some defensive players opted out too. So, it's a rebuilding year for LSU. But if you pay Ed Orgeron $9 million a year, you're paying him Nick Saban, John Harbaugh, and Dabo Swinney money. I'm sorry, but you don't get a rebuilding year. You have to go out and compete and win your conference every year. So good luck with that.
Yeah. And it speaks to Clemson's culture about trying to get in as many young guys as we can into the rotation, even if it's in the third and fourth quarters, because we know that they're going to hit the field at some point, and we'd rather have them hit the field prepared and not for the first time when they're starters.
Yeah, exactly. Well, granted, again, if you're hitting the field for the first time against South Carolina, it's basically like Clemson's B team anyway, right? That's basically what LSU got to do with it.
Really down on South Carolina this year, buddy.
Man, I worked in South Carolina for a while against a whole bunch of South Carolina fans where every year I had to listen through the offseason that they got this 4-star inside linebacker who's going to turn it around for South Carolina. So maybe they're just really setting up a fantastic comeback for them. It can't be a Clemson show without a little South Carolina hate, so it can't be any other way. But no, I mean, I think that's basically all my thoughts as far as the amount of all the different games that went on this weekend. Love having the Big Ten back. I thought that was huge. Pac-12 comes back sometime in the next few weeks, but seeing Ohio State play, seeing Justin Fields, can't talk highly enough about Justin Fields and how great he looks. Honestly, depending on how the Heisman and everything plays out, as far as how many games Ohio State gets to play in, because not everyone's playing the same amount of games. Justin Fields might just be the Heisman winner at the end of it. Trevor Lawrence, I think, is going to be taken off at a lot of halftime games. Probably won't have the rushing stats, and I think Ohio State's going to go for some style points. So I think you might be looking at the Heisman front runner pretty soon over there.
Man, don't jinx him.
Why do you think I'm saying it? Yeah. Trying to knock him out of the race already. But nothing about respect for Ohio State. And even Alabama, again, what they're doing on offense and their defense will get there. Both those teams are insanely talented. For Alabama's defense, similar to LSU, for their defense to be that bad right now, they'll get it figured out. They have too many 5 stars and 4 stars and first-round talent on that side of the ball to sink all year.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Exactly. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us. Eric, any last words?
Hey, looking forward to the Boston College matchup this weekend. They're 4-2. We're 6-0. It's going to be another showdown at Death Valley in Clemson. Stay with us on Wednesday or Thursday. We'll upload a video for our pregame thoughts on that. If you enjoyed our content, please help us out. Like, subscribe, click the button down there. Every little bit helps.
Awesome.
What about you?
No, I like the Wednesday or the Thursday because I don't want them to know. I want it to be a guessing game. I love surprises. I don't want to be locked into one thing. So Wednesday or Thursday. But either way, we know the game will be on Saturday. It'll be a heck of a game.